so let's start then.
And Brandy's grabbing her thing, she'll be up in just a second.
Okay.
And unfortunately, Mark got a hold of me. His son was injured at football this weekend, and he's not able to come into the office today. His son's getting some surgery, it sounds like. So, he's like 12, 13 maybe.
Baker.
Yeah.
PCL.
I think it's a break. I'm not sure.
Well, then why don't we go to number 5 since Ryan's not here?
Or just right here.
Oh, okay. There we are. So we'll stick with number 1, Slaughter Coffee. Slaughter County Coffee.
I think the applicant's present if you want to.
Yeah, come on up. Thank you.
So they've submitted an application to the city to vend. And they're gonna have espresso drinks, smoothies, teas, Italian sodas, some baked goods. Should be a map in your packet. It's gonna be over in the industrial park area. And hopefully it shows well on the map, but it's a little green highlighted spot with the arrow to it.
Got a map.
So it is on the back.
Unless I'm looking at the wrong.
The handwritten one is in the back of the packet. It's the handwritten application that we have this.
Okay.
The other way. And so since this isn't a predetermined approved site by the city, we're just bringing it before public properties to see what the interest is, and then recommendation, and then hopefully bring it forward to the regular council meeting for full approval.
I wonder if there's a better map, because I'm seeing the specific map. I don't know what it is.
That's when you first come in, right?
So when you come into Lloyd Parkway,
Yeah.
this is
Okay.
it's gonna be right there, right in front.
The
Okay.
jail thing is right here, right?
So it's all.
Come in over here, this is the work release center, right over here.
So yeah, you come in,
This is
case
all
goes
collected,
up here, yeah,
right?
and then we'll.
Work release is here, and then the rest of the,
Yeah.
yep, okay.
My first question is, and I apologize for not knowing this, do we have a right-of-way usage policy?
No.
Because we're getting more requests for use of our right-of-way, such as up by the courthouse and this and the hot dog stand. I mean, we're getting more of them, and I'm wondering if we had a policy, and the answer
Yeah,
is
we have a, what we just call a small section in our code, it's called temporary vendor license application, and that's it, it's very small, it's very, there's no detail in the code at all, it needs to be updated.
It's a good question, because I also thought the same thing. I also think that this is our area, we don't have to get permission from any, or I should say, work with another jurisdiction as far like the
Correct.
courthouse.
Right.
So I don't have a problem with this one, but I do think going forward, we probably need to start looking at some sort of a policy for these things, because they do seem to be coming up more and more often.
And it seems like in this case, it's easier to use our right-of-way than it is to lease land in the area or purchase land in the area to, it's just obviously more cost-effective for them to use our property than acquire their own property.
Other than that, everything else is in order, Brent?
Yes, they submitted all the proper paperwork.
I don't have a problem moving this forward to council. Anybody else? It's
I
gonna be like,
had something like this downtown. So can people drive up to your truck?
Yeah, I'm working on, I want the window lowered, but I mean, it's able, I can put out a tray, people walk up, I go to soccer tournaments and stuff, but it can be driven up to Oswell. It's kind of why I chose that spot, because I was talking to Casco, but I didn't want to be in a place where their trucks are turned around a lot of big trucks up there. I'm getting any big right.
It's actually a good spot.
But just to kind of carry it forward a little bit, and not specific to this one, but, she's gonna have a coffee truck up there, and I can't remember what all she was gonna serve. But it was only from like 6 to 1 during the day, something like that. But again, this would be a great location for one of the food trucks, and I think it is something that we have to address, a right-of-way policy.
And is there no lease amount for this? This is just simply a permit to use the right-of-way?
I'll have to check into that because it's my understanding is that it'll be both. You have to pay a lease, which is predetermined by the hot dog vendor, $10 per month, on top of the temporary license fee. So the temporary vendor license fee is just to vend, and then if you wanna be on our property, our right of way, it's $10 a month, but I'll double check to find out what the difference is, why we charge the hot dog vendor versus, why we charge the hot dog vendor. I have to look up the previous attorney's comments.
Okay, anything else?
Good luck.
Yeah, we're gonna take this to full council.
Is that one with tomorrow night?
Yes,
Yes.
Will it be, can we get it on the agenda? Okay.
I have a free slot.
Okay, space in there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Let's take number 5 next. Come on up if you want.
Okay, and this, I'll go ahead and start off. I've asked Kathy to come up for this one because we've had an issue downtown on the sidewalks with, I know that an application came forward already for the cafe to have table and chairs out on the sidewalk.
The bistro?
Yeah, and then other vendors are putting all kinds of things out on the sidewalk, and essentially the issue we have is that WashDOT has contacted us because they want each of these people to have a lease with the state. And they've also pointed out that RCW, what is it, 4724020 requires the city to essentially enforce and maintain everything from the back of the curb, including, providing, ensuring that leases are carried out properly with the state is what, yeah, exactly. And so we have all these vendors, and we've sent them letters previously, and we had an issue with one particular person who came in and was real upset with the city over this issue. And I guess we wanted to bring it forward for discussion. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's pretty good. In the memo, I kind of laid out different categories where we tend to have some problems down there.
And I think this is one of the issues too is the state has come to us and they've said, well, you don't have a lease for your marquee that's out on the sidewalk. And, obviously that's been there for a long time.
Think
but
of that in writing.
I'm not
About
sure.
your
No,
marquee.
not have it in writing.
No.
It would be great to have in writing.
So,
Because that's major. If they don't like our marquee, which is in their right of way,
They just want a lease, they want us to pay for the right to put it there.
the whole marquee.
So, I mean,
So I guess there's really no good solution here because every business that wants to put stuff out has to get permission from the city and then lease something from the state in order to use the sidewalk in front of their business for permanent displays or even putting up a bench out on the street if it's not a city bench. What business is this in front of the picture that you have here?
That's in front of the veterans,
Okay.
the bench. I think that's one of the oldest ones there. No, that's not. The other,
And that's in
yes,
front of
Oh,
VFW.
VFW.
VFW, yeah.
so when we had a discussion earlier in the year about, and I don't remember which business it was that wanted to put some
The
tables and
coffee shop,
chairs.
that one bakery.
Okay, they wanted to put some tables and chairs, and we said yes on our end, but did we tell them you have to go to the state and seek a lease?
Yeah.
We sent letters to them letting them know.
Okay, and now the state's saying that either they don't or others that are putting stuff out don't have a lease?
Well, based from what I got from the regular meeting and the work study session, is that we were just gonna notify them. Our office sent them a letter saying, hey, you gotta provide us insurance, fill out this application, and then, oh, by the way, you need to contact the state. So the conversation I got from the work study was just to notify them that we weren't gonna police and monitor and follow up as they did with the state. So I have no idea if they followed up with the state, I'm assuming not.
At that time, I don't think it was that one bakery that's got rid
No.
of
No, it
Oh,
was.
you
It
might be
was
right.
the bistro.
It was the
Okay.
bistro, it was
Right.
Bay Street Bistro,
Right.
they came to us and they
Yes.
asked us to put, and we allowed them to put a couple.
Right, and originally it was for a fee, and then we came back to the council said, well, we're not really too keen on the fee, so we're gonna have them do it as long as they fill out the application and have insurance. So we did that with bistro, and then the bakery came up, and she just filled out the application, and ever since, and I think it's been since February, we've been trying to get insurance. So she, we contact her and say, you guys, you're not compliant, your application hasn't been approved, you need insurance. She sold the business, and now we're trying to get it from that one bakery, and that one bakery is not very happy, and so
But
this is kind of like.
the issue is not necessarily that one bakery, it's all of the other businesses, because the biggest offender is the Veterans Museum downtown. They put things hanging from the marquee, and they put things along in front of their building, so there's a very narrow walkway in front of that building. In addition then to all of the other merchandise people put out. So the question is, what do we want to do?
What was it? I'm sorry, go ahead, Fred.
What's the ADA width? Is it 41 inches, 36 inches?
Well, it
Well,
depends,
there's-
you can go down extra narrow for a short distance, and so I think it's, as long as the obstruction is less than so many feet, what is it, 12 or 20 feet? You can go down to 42, I think.
Well, there's 32 that you can go down to. 36 is more of the typical. And then for the sign code, we have 4 feet.
For A-board signs.
Yeah.
We sent a letter in 2010 to all the merchants.
Correct.
Was that the last time we communicated with all of them? And that was sent to both the property owner and the business owner, correct?
In written form, yes.
Though we have communicated individually with businesses since then.
Yes. Yes. Having complaints or different things going on down there, I have gone down.
I say send them one more letter that says the state's demanding a lease on this space, and you have to get permission or you have to remove it. I mean, if we're in charge of enforcing it, I don't see how we cannot do that.
It's gonna be a huge liability, because if someone were to get hurt and they don't have a lease, the state's gonna come after us, and we're ultimately responsible because we're allowing them to do it without getting state permission,
Is
so.
there paperwork from the state that we can pass on to them with our letter so they can see that the state's asked us for
I can
specific things?
request that. It's been phone calls so
Okay,
far.
because at least they would know like who they have to contact to get state permission if that's what they have to do.
That can be included in the letter.
And so to be out on the sidewalk, you need state and local approval. So would the state give the lease before the city gives approval, or does the city need to give approval and then conditioned
think
on
it's-
getting a state lease?
I think that's one of those catches. I don't believe we can give permission without state approval.
That's what I would recommend, get state approval first, and then get ours. Because what's gonna happen is what's happening now. We're telling them to go to the state, and they say, oh yeah, okay, and in the meantime, they still have their merchandise out, so.
I would
I agree.
I would invite us, as a city, to think about either having actually inviting all of the merchants to come to a meeting and explain it all to them, rather than just giving them a letter that they're gonna read in the mail. I think we should be a little more intimate in the discussion with them. And we could do that in a couple of ways, and one is we could go through the Port Orchard Bay Street Association and see if they could set that up, or we could start there. But I think all of those merchants, I think it warrants a face-to-face conversation with them. Because they're gonna get a letter, they're gonna read it, and they're all going to interpret it differently. So that would be a recommendation I have to our group.
It's difficult in that a lot of the buildings were built up to the right of way.
Exactly.
Others have that triangle shape or the dip back behind and they bring things out or have displays, that type of thing. So it makes it difficult. We have a turnover that's pretty big down there as well for the smaller shops. And they continually get the wrong information. Thus, then I make a stop, so, yeah.
Okay, so I think that we should get some information from state DOT on who people need to contact and what specifically is required. And so if they have a form that can be completed, or if they can give us a letter and then attach the form as saying any business who wants to, place merchandise or signs or tables on the sidewalk needs to first lease the area that they wish to use from the state, and then they need local approval, and then we need to write maybe just an outline of what is required in order to get that local approval.
And even if we didn't have a formal meeting, even if we got all that information together and got time at a POBSA meeting to present it.
Yeah, I think we could go
We've done
together
that
and
before.
present.
That would be
Yeah,
great.
I think you were
So
just
um,
on.
who's the head of POBSA right now?
Don Ryan is,
No.
but elections are in a couple of weeks, and then Bobby Stewart will be, Old Antique Mall.
Okay.
Mhm.
So maybe wait a couple of weeks and talk to the new president when the election is complete.
The other on the seating, the benches. One of the things that other cities, when I've talked to them about that, they've put their own benches out in certain locations, such as Paulsbo. And, they're bolted in, they don't go anywhere. And that's how they kind of resolved giving a little bit of a casual, yet people can sit, chat for a little moment. And they've taken on the responsibility of those, and I don't know if that would help as well.
Did we have a few emails from gentlemen that wanted us to replace the benches at the marina, which they're not our benches, from what I can understand. We keep getting those emails, so I just wanted to take that into consideration if we put benches on Bay Street, that we're gonna have a city bench, a need for a city bench policy, and when and where do we replace them, and all of that. I don't have a problem with doing it, and I understand, they don't look the same and maintain the same, and bolted down, and we have authority where they go, and it takes care of all that other stuff, not necessarily the bistro seating type of table and chairs, but some place for somebody to sit and have an ice cream cone or a latte or whatever. So we can look at that later, but right now, I think the first thing we need to do is gather that DOT information. Because it's gonna be more than the benches, and, I assume that's gonna be some of the feedback we hear from the POBSA. But it's the hay bales and it's the other displays and stuff that are.
This leaves absolutely no room for even walking on the sidewalk around it.
Well, I had to have them move it
Yeah.
because I didn't get back far enough with the glare on the camera. I couldn't see what I was shooting. But the 88 and that little dark corner is the curb. There was not enough room for anybody to walk around that, so.
My dogs would pee on it if we were walking by it.
People were worried too about ashes,
Yeah.
somebody putting a cigarette out. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Those sound like good steps?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Thank you very much.
So there's nothing for us to move forward at this point in time. We'll get some information back, and then a couple weeks when we know the elections for the Bay Street Association, we'll reach out or somebody. Nick, I'm assuming that'll be you, or?
Yeah, we'll reach out to the POBSA and perhaps Becky can keep us informed as to when that election is complete.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think I have anything for the rest of the agenda. Do you mind if I
I'll call you for economic development. You have Foot Ferry Do you want,
I'm short staffed today, so I need to.
would you rather be at the end of that agenda or the beginning?
I have no preference. So
Okay, I'll call you up whenever
whichever
we're ready
way
for you.
That works. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Brian.
And I'm realizing that we included the Parks Rules ordinance, but the Parks Rules are not attached to this. I don't think anyway.
Do we, okay, are we gonna do park?
I have it. I have it. One pager?
Okay, yeah, there's
Yes.
supposed to be the text of the
Right.
ordinance, and I think it must have been attached to this document, so. Why don't we save that till the end, and I'll see if I can have Stephanie print out a couple copies of that. So Paul Powers Park, Councilmember Cartwright, at the city council meeting, you had requested that we pull that item from the agenda, and we were gonna bring it to Public Properties for discussion about what to do with that park. And Mark provided some materials for this, and obviously the survey that we have of the park, but beyond that, I guess I'll open it to you for discussion.
Well, I guess I have to admit my confusion over this whole issue. And I'm not sure I have this in order, but I could, I guess, try to explain why I'm confused and what information I have heard, either in this committee or elsewhere, about this particular piece of property. So my understanding of looking at the parks budget, there was $300,000 originally set aside for this park to do a massive upgrade of the park, potentially with artificial turf. And then that kind of vision went to, let's make it usable, at least the upper lots, and maybe that's just some grading and all that. And then we looked at the fence line, boundary line, I guess, where the house is back up. We sent them, those homeowners, some information on that boundary line, because if we were gonna do the upper level work, we needed to know where that boundary was. Then I heard that, we heard in here, I think, from Mark, that you and Mark would be able to sit down and kind of pencil something out, kind of an idea about an upper level as one option, and then what we could potentially do for an upper and lower level option, and we would be presented with a couple of different options. And then I think we heard that we could probably look to spend about somewhere between $9,000 or $10,000. I don't recall the exact numbers, but that was what I have in my mind for some initial engineering drawings that would allow us to work on the upper level while we think about what to do on the lower level. And I was under the impression that we could look to do this work on the upper level to make it more usable for about $50,000. And then this came to council, and I believe this was $67,000 for just the engineering work. And
For both, for upper.
for upper and lower. So my overall feeling on this is there's only about 100,000 left, I think, if I have it right. And spending $67,000 just for engineering study doesn't leave anything left to do any work.
Well, and that's not an engineering study, that's
That's the
engineering,
work.
that's actual
The
engineering.
PSNE,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm at a loss as, I guess I keep hearing different numbers and different intent for what this park could or should be. We've also heard from Beck and Fred, we're very, very supportive of if we were gonna do this improvement, that we have some sort of an access from Flower Street to allow those neighborhoods to access the park without having to go to Sydney to come to the front of the park. And so my thought process now is that, do we even know if the neighborhood wants this park, this much level of work. And the other thing is that I have an understanding, and again, all this stuff's coming from different areas, that 67,900 for PS&E would be a similar type of design for McCormick Woods. And so now I'm hearing that, again, different areas, that this could potentially be a park that's akin to the McCormick Village Park, and do we want such a large elaborate park in that neighborhood's another question. So I'm of a mind right now, before we spend this kind of money and effort into Paul Powers Park, that we somehow hear from the citizens of Port Orchard about their preference about where the city's gonna put that kind of major money, into what park and where, for what purpose. And that's why I asked it to come back here, because I'm personally confused.
I remember it just a little bit different than you do,
Okay.
but most of it is very similar. We had a meeting, and we agreed to do the survey, and then we agreed to contact the property owners, because some of them were encroaching. And at that time, we discussed taking a certain amount of money, I don't remember what it was, and doing something with the upper level. And that was kind of what I remember we were gonna do. We were gonna do something with the upper level. Nick and Mark were gonna do a sketch and give us an idea of what we could do with both moving forward. And I thought that we were on board with doing something and finding the money out of what was left, this 120,000 or whatever it was, to do with something with the upper. And then the next thing is we had a proposal for $9,500 come before council to do the whatever design work that needed to be done on the upper part. And we said, well, just a minute, we thought that was going to be done in-house. We did not know that we were going to have an expense for that. We brought it back to this meeting, and at that time, I was under the impression when I left that meeting that we were going to be able to get the design work done. And I don't know if it was going to be a complete design as was proposed for the 67,000, but was going to be something that Norm Olson would do, but that Mark would put his stamp on it. That the city would be taking the liability on it. Norm Olson was not. And Mark thought that they would do that for probably in the $15,000 to $20,000 range, from where we were with the 9,500, that may double to get that done. And we were fine with that. We said that would be good. And we left that meeting. And the next thing that we got was the $67,000 proposal, which was totally out of scope with what the committee had discussed. And that's why we brought it back.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Well, one thing
Fills
I'll,
the gaps nicely, thank you.
one thing as far as what the neighborhood or the city wants is, and I wasn't here when the parks plan was written, so I don't know how much public participation went into our actual parks plan, but improvements to the park are identified in our comprehensive plan, and that was at least vetted, though it's unclear how much, the public was actually involved in its creation versus that being a staff and planning commission generated document. And Mayor, were you on the planning commission when that went through? Do you remember?
This plan that we're talking about now isn't in that park plan. It doesn't look like the park plan.
It's in the capital improvement program, but it's
Right,
not.
But it's very general.
Yeah,
It doesn't include the lower field at all. It doesn't include moving the playground.
Mhm.
It doesn't, this has gotten way off track.
Okay.
To begin with, Mark was just saying that there's things we can do from spruce it up, clean up the lines, all the way up to, and then the up to just got wings and legs and started rolling. I don't think anybody, I'm not aware of anybody that's pushing for the Cadillac plan for that park, ever has been. But you might refresh yourself by looking at the parks plan and
Yeah.
seeing if you think it fits.
Well, there was 300,000 in there. I didn't
No,
look at the
that
parks
300,000 wasn't in there. No.
for Paul Powers.
Yeah,
No,
there
it
is-
wasn't.
There's a line item.
That was the estimated cost but it wasn't in the budget. It never has been in the budget.
Well,
Actually,
Well,
I think
that's the disconnect.
$165,000
Yes.
in the budget, of which some of that we already used.
No, I understand it's not in the budget, but that was the projection for doing something at this park was a 300,000.
I think I think that was Mark's spitball once we started asking
Okay.
questions about the big full meal deal. And we still don't know, really. It's still a spitball because no engineer has said this is what it's gonna
That
cost.
particular cost estimate sheet that we're looking at was put together a long time ago. I don't think that's a current document at all.
It was 2011.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
it was fairly recent.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was that
Yeah.
new.
So yeah, that was my only question is because those dollars were identified in the plan, but it wasn't really described what was gonna happen, and there's no parks plan like there is for McCormick for this park as far as what it's going to be. You know, I think, you know,
In answer to your question, if we're gonna do the big deal, that I don't know what it is, everybody has a different idea what the big deal is, then we should include it in a process where the public,
yeah,
you're right.
you need to do a parks plan for that park.
Right.
You
Yeah,
have to.
just like you did for McCormick Village where you have
to, even
somebody come out
if
and
you wanna
meet.
add something that has previously not been included in it, you have to have a process. So, I think we're still getting the cart before the horse here, you know, that plan has never been vetted with the public or anybody else, so. And what we were gonna do, Mark came to, you know, the survey originally was survey it, get the lines where they're supposed to be, because it's not gonna get any better. The longer you leave lines blurred like that, and the more people use it, the more they think they have. And especially now that we've told them, you shouldn't be using it. If we just let them lose it another 10 years, we could have trouble, because they can say, well, they let us use it. I mean, not really, because you can't take property from the city, you know, no matter how long you use it, even if it's 20 years continuous. But what we wanted to do is straighten that line, and we had free fill dirt, and for about 30,000, the two of us figured we'd have a usable field, other than maybe planting grass. And then, I don't know where the turf came from, but that was another idea. That's not in, I don't believe in any of the park plans.
No, it's not.
No, I
There's no
just think
turf involved, you know, and of course, that would blow the 300 to 500 or 600,000.
Try 2 million, but no, I think that was just a vision of what the park could be, not necessarily what the plan was.
So we have vision, we have a plan, and we have something else, you know, we have three things we're talking. So I really am confused now.
Yeah, to me, unless you're gonna spend just a little bit of money to have somebody bring in fill or do some light grading and vegetation cutting and things like that, you really need to go forward with a park plan for this park. And then that's a commitment of, you know,
What would we have to spend for engineering study to do just the fill and basic grass up there?
Now,
What do
just
we
a
have to
second,
do?
that's where we were in the first place.
Yeah, I know.
It's exactly what the mayor said, is we were at a meeting and we were just going to level the top for about $30,000 and we were good to go. That's where we originally left it. And then it came back with this $9,500. And that's where we said, just a second, where did that come in? We thought we were doing this
Right, I
in-house.
think Mark said he didn't have the time that summer to do that plan or whatever, so.
Whatever, and then the 9,500 came back to us and we were confused. So we bought it back to public property, and that was when the suggestion was for maybe,
A
you
little bit
know,
more.
a little bit more, we could get the whole thing. But that came back at 67. That's why we are where we are right now, is we left thinking that we could do all of this, just as the mayor said, for about $30,000. And then all of a sudden, we were using a third of that just for the design work.
Right.
And then,
Then pretty soon all of it plus another bunch.
yeah, so
Engineering.
what we need to do now is decide what do we want to do.
Is there a carryover in the budget? We're gonna get there later, but that would be my first question. Do we have anything in the budget set aside for Paul Powers for next year?
The same money moves forward into the next budget.
Well, we reappropriate it.
yeah,
in
it's,
the next budget.
so I don't know
It
that,
won't be
I don't think
earmarked
there's
for
been
power.
any decision to spend anything on Paul Powers. I think there's a beginning balance and there's an ending balance there right now, because no decision has been made to spend any of that money on anything.
Okay.
And I was told that the 165 or whatever that initial amount was that was earmarked for Paul Powers did not have to be used for Paul Powers.
You're right.
That it was just, that was the park's allocation, and they just put Paul Powers' name
And
on
we'll
it.
use some of it for McCormick.
And Van Zee.
Yeah.
And we used some, we used a
25.
fairly good amount at Van Zee to increase.
25 to do
fix
the
it.
parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there's not as much in there as, I think 95, so
Something.
it's more likely. But that can be spent anywhere next year, I would think, depending on how we pass the budget. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that any committee and any council member can make a recommendation on what to do with that, and some people may say, let's wait till next year.
Well, I believe I believe it was in my budget, and so the budget I sent forward is included in there somewhere, and I don't even remember where, I'll have to talk to Alan where we allocated it.
I'd have to look, I thought Mark said that it was just an ending reserve, it was part of the reserve, or the ending cash balance.
It may have went back into the parks, you know, we had more money in parks than that,
Yeah,
so it could have just went back to clean that balance up.
And I remember from recent meetings that we were under the impression that there would be some sort of check-in or outreach to the public or their immediate neighbors to see what they felt.
Right, and I
And
know,
we thought that would come back.
and I know
before
Jerry
something before.
brought that up in work study session.
I think
We-
before the rest of the
we told
council approved the
Jerry
money.
that this was the work study before the 67-9, was that it was our intent not to do a whole lot at that park where we wouldn't necessarily need a public outreach. It was just cleaning it up, using the existing parking lot, and making that surface more usable, so it wouldn't drastically change the neighborhood, if you will. And Jerry was okay with that. I remember Jerry saying that, I don't know about others, but, so I guess the question is, do we still wanna try to make it a usable practice field, I guess, for lack of a better term, grass field? Or shelve it until we get more input from the public? I don't wanna spend $70,000 for a plan like this if there
Without
isn't,
input.
If we're not,
Yeah.
without a lot of
we
input
don't
from
have
a lot of
the
folks.
impetus to move forward and do it later, you know.
I think it sounds to me like you have three alternatives. One of them is to just not do anything at the park at this time. You could hire somebody to do the public outreach and come up with a concept plan based on what the community wants and then execute that in future years. Or you can do a very light grading project that's limited to grading and seeding the park and ask Mark to go back and get a quote for that work, which would not include these extra things like moving the playground or items like that. And so that would be, I think that's about as far as you would want to go without public input, would be grading and then reseeding everything, next year. So I think, are those the alternatives?
That's what I'm hearing, and I'm not in favor of spending a lot of public money on outreach to do something drastic. We can wait on that down the road. It would be my preference.
A question, there will be a parks element in our comprehensive plan. And is it best for us to wait for that process before we put a lot of money into any park?
Well, right now, we are not spending money to do a heavy update of the parks plan. I mean, the update that we're doing is shifting the projects forward in the capital budget, but we're not proposing to change a lot with parks because that's a major project that we don't have the resources to do in-house. So that would be possibly something that you could do, is say, well, maybe we need to update our parks plan and do it professionally, as opposed to copying somebody else's parks plan and
One of my thoughts is, I know one of the supplemental items that was a request, was a carry forward from last year, was to have the University of Washington students do the waterfront plan. And I personally would be more inclined to have them do the parks piece.
I'm not sure.
Which is what, going to the neighbors? It's a much smaller scope of the waterfront plan.
Well, the parks
All of
plan
the
is much
whole
bigger.
The parks plan is much bigger.
Well, and I don't know that they could do the whole parks plan. I think that's almost a project that's bigger than what a group of students can accomplish, because there's the capital component of it. And frankly, I think it's a longer project than 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
But one of the things that worries me is that our parks impact fee is actually based on the list of capital projects that's in our parks plan. And I'm not sure that the capital parks plan is realistic. I think there's things that are in there that aren't necessarily going to happen and that haven't been fully vetted. And therefore our fee calculation may not reflect, what it should.
Right, and I think that's where we were with the line item on Paul Towers.
Yeah, we're doing we're hiring professional transportation planners to do the transportation element if it gets funded in the budget, and the same thing with the water and sewer plans that have to be updated. The water plans are required by the state Department of Health, and the sewer plan, I don't think there's a state requirement, but it hasn't been updated in a long time, and it needs to be updated. But my recommendation would be to have all of those plans done, by experts in park planning or experts in water and sewer planning, and not by planning staff that has a whole lot of other areas of
Right.
responsibility.
Right.
And then it brings up the whole other discussion for this particular piece of property. There's an empty shed here.
No, it's full.
Well, is there another building here? Is that the old firehouse?
Yeah, and it's public
Okay.
works storage, and I think Chimes and Lights stuff is in there, and
Okay.
But you're right, that is the only thing that the public sees. They don't see the park behind it.
Right.
That's been one of the major,
And it's our
Issues.
property, and,
Yeah.
it's a potential future expansion for city needs. Which is a whole nother level of discussion perhaps, because we could talk about this space is full and moving things around. And my feeling at this point in time, my gut feeling is I don't want to do anything with Paul Powers right now. I don't like doing things half-cocked. And every time we try to talk about just putting some dirt and seed, it just grows, it's money down the drain. If you need a new roof on your house, why are you talking about painting the trim?
yeah.
there's also been the discussion of should this be something that the city sells for a location that's more visible?
Yeah.
Well, and Fred, I don't know if you remember, Carolyn discussed this a lot when she was on this committee, and I feel like I remember her mentioning that, look, Paul Powers' name is on this park, and we haven't done anything with it, and, that wasn't something that she was very happy with because, she didn't want an undeveloped park
Right.
just sitting there that was unused with his name on it.
Somebody shared with me their feeling was to sell it or improve
Develop it or sell it, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I heard, but I can't speak for her.
And in my personal feeling, if we're going to invest in another, I don't want to say giant, but a multi-use park that's got potential for different things, whether it's a dog park and a soccer field and all that, I just don't think this is a good location for that. And I'd rather put money into a more visible, potentially more usable location than at the end of Sibley. I just don't see this as a location that people are going to drive to use. I don't know, I could be wrong, but
That's true, but remember there's a lot of subdivisions down by Flower.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
that's-
people that live there.
there is. But
Yeah.
And that was, having lived in that neighborhood for many years, the park is important to that neighborhood. As far as a place, those are relatively small lots up there, it's a place for the kids to go. So I support the park, but one of the questions I have, Nick, is are we having a lot of comments from the neighborhood or the community in general saying, why aren't you doing something with Paul Powers, or we want this there? I mean, are we
Other
getting?
than the youth sports groups, I haven't heard a single comment.
Yeah, the
I've heard a
immediate,
lot of comments.
from the immediate neighbors?
Yeah, I don't get out and talk to people
Not
in
from
the
the
same way you
neighbors,
guys do.
but I've heard a lot of comments from Little League, Pee Wee.
Yeah.
From the sports youth groups?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a field, they want to use a field, but they don't want to use that one because it's lumpy, bumpy, and it's got a ditch on each side.
I think-
But they would love to use a field, and we have a limited amount of fields that are usable.
And I think when you talk about you know, the possibility of selling something, you also have to look, we have an adopted level of service standard for parks. And right now, we're at the very bottom end of the range of parks per acre that we're, or parks per
we
thousand
never
people.
sell a piece of property for parks, I mean, a park property, ever. I mean, it's gonna get worse, not gonna get any better.
Well-
If we go out in the market to buy park property later, we're gonna pay through the nose.
I kept thinking of that open space on Fireweed and Sydney, which I think someone has already sold to the developer, but
Yes, no, that's been a
that's-
development.
Yeah, which is sad because that's a beautiful open spot that's very visible. But I think Powell Powers has been constrained because it's hard to see from the street. And we don't want to give up that building, we don't want to raise it. I mean, we collectively.
Well, we use it, it's full of equipment,
True, but
they're
it's,
full of equipment.
yeah.
I mean, we'd have to somehow find another building to store our equipment and then pay for it. So, I mean, you just don't get rid of an asset, in my opinion, that's that valuable.
So this is where I think we have, if we wanted to, I believe we have the support of the current council to put some fill dirt on the upper level, level it off and seed it, and nothing more. Basically, make it a little bit more usable in its current configuration. I believe we have that support from the council. If we do anything more, whether, in my feeling, if we do anything more, whether it's spend $67,900 for a PS&E plan, you know, we're gonna need support of the council. I don't think we'll have it, because I won't support $67,900 for PS&E.
So it sounds to me then like the option that should be brought forward is again, to have Olson or somebody else draw it, but to limit the scope to a grading plan and an erosion control plan and a seeding plan.
I thought
And
they
just
already-
have that bid ready so that it can go
I
out.
thought they had that for the 9,500. I thought that was what the original was.
I'll ask Mark
I
when
think
he
it
gets
pretty
in.
much is, but I think it even included a fence, moving the
Okay.
fence. I think it, that's what, I think he went to that, that's what we originally were gonna do, but we had free fill, and we don't have that. The free fill's gone. And it was free delivery too, that was the beauty of it, and that's why we were rushing. It seemed like we were rushing ahead, but we were gonna get probably, I don't know, $20,000 worth of free clean fill. And if we were ready for it, that's why we went in and did the survey, you know, but I think that's what it included. I think that he was looking at moving the fences, grading and filling and ditching, or not ditching.
And so would this be for the upper area only or the whole area?
Upper area, upper
Okay,
area.
upper area. So what I will talk to Mark about then is, I will ask him to get a revised quote for drafting services that includes the upper area only, grading, erosion control, moving the fence, and seeding the fill once it's in place. And then that's the extent of it, and it'll be a bid-ready plan that he can take to a
The
contractor.
bare minimum to make that upper level field usable for soccer and like sports. Right,
Okay.
is that your understanding too?
Yeah, I just don't remember how much that's supposed to
And
cost.
we had
Yeah, we'll
asked,
find out.
and we had asked in the work study to carry over that 9,500. I'm hoping the total of the work and the design will come over 60.
Do you want to see that back here before it goes to council?
I do,
Okay.
I don't know about you, but Fred, don't you want to see it back here?
Even if that information is available to us before our next meeting, I wouldn't mind seeing it in email form.
Well, the next public property meeting is actually still before the budget meeting.
Oh, okay.
So it would be 2 weeks from now, and so hopefully we
Yeah,
can
but-
get a quote.
Okay, that's perfect.
I'll talk to Mark today, perhaps I think he's at the doctor's office waiting, so I think he'll maybe be able to call us. Okay, so is that the end of that discussion?
Are we gonna talk about the mailboxes, or are we gonna,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we're way out of order here.
That was nice.
So, the park rules also, I've got copies of those, but let's talk about mailboxes first.
And that's this one.
So we received, a complaint concerning, people parking in front of mailboxes and the fact that our local code lacks any provision that makes it illegal to block a mailbox with a parked car. And so Officer Lynch sent something from the city of Pacific that is just a very brief provision that would be inserted in the parking code that says it's unlawful to park a motor vehicle within 15 feet of a clearly visible mailbox. And basically gives them local authority to write tickets for that sort of violation. And I know this issue came up to Public Properties, I think it was my first month or two on the job, where up on Division Street, near the courthouse, I think, was it that county employees were parking on that street and blocking mailboxes, and so people were having issues getting mail?
That's part of it, because I don't think that's limited parking either. We didn't make it a 4-hour. That's the one block that's
Yeah.
unlimited parking all day.
Yeah.
And none of the curbs are painted, right? They're not painted yellow or red or anything.
Yeah, and I think the mail carrier was having to get out of their vehicle to deliver mail at one or more locations.
But it's been that way for years, so what's actually developed, they're no longer getting out of their truck to
Thanks, Chris.
reach the mailbox?
Because that was exactly my thought. I mean, if this has been like this for
It's been
30
way
years,
long, Yeah.
why all of a sudden is it a problem now?
Well, and Mayor, I know that this email came from Officer Lynch to you, and I don't know if it was, I don't know if this complaint was specific to any one location.
I don't know either.
So I think the larger issue is, do we want to have a local code that says that we'll write tickets if people are obstructing a mailbox? And there is federal code that deals with this, but I don't know that the local officers are writing tickets under federal law.
All I do know though is if we start opening Pandora's box about this, we're gonna lose a lot of parking places, because if you have to, if you allow plenty of sweep in, sweep out room, you're gonna lose a parking place on each end more than we, Yeah, I agree with you guys. I'm wondering, why is there a problem now? Because we've been delivering mail up there forever, and.
Well, and I don't think the complaint is at this location right now.
Right, and one complaint, maybe we can fix it in the one area, but maybe we don't need to go and try to fix it citywide, because we might lose more than we gain.
Yeah, although I think if you pass this rule, I don't know that it's gonna be something that the officers are out seeking to enforce, but if somebody says, hey, there's somebody parked in front of my mailbox, the police can know, then they have the tool to go deal with that particular area if there's a recurring problem.
Yeah, if it was just a general, no parking in front of mailboxes, so you impede delivery of mail.
Mhm.
But, back here a few months ago, we were talking about striping lots and lots of spots,
Mhm.
and losing lots of parking places, so.
Well, my feeling is if we make it a ordinance, there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna get that information and move their car for fear of getting ticketed. It's gonna have the same effect of raising a lot of angst and a lot of parking concerns. And we know parking in the city is pretty good to begin with.
Yeah, I don't have a recommendation other than
Maybe,
fix the problem, the immediate problem if possible, and not try to fix the whole problem.
yeah, maybe knock on the door of the person that's parking in front of the mailbox and remind them, it's federal. Well, that's just gonna send them off and say, well, everybody else is gonna know why am I getting picked up?
But it's worth a try. They could, it's a little bit like downtown, they can ignore us, but we can try,
On my street, there isn't, where my mailbox is, if someone were to park in front of it, they're parking on the street. I mean, they're parking where traffic flows. It's not, there's not a parking strip there. So people obviously are not gonna park in front of there. So it's kind of a situation where parking is available in front of mailboxes.
My mailbox is on my front door, so so we have somebody who walks to deliver in my neighborhood, so we don't have this problem, but the 500
Right, see, that's
block,
what I was trying
Yeah.
to distinguish
it
is,
is different block by block.
Right,
Yeah.
different places
The
have
postal
different.
system does seem to be trying to consolidate new subdivisions in one place.
Gang boxes,
Mhm.
yeah.
yeah,
So they don't want to, yeah, they're trying to make it more efficient for themselves.
right.
And that could be part of why they're just being less accommodating with what they've done in the past, with like getting out of the truck to walk a few steps to deliver.
That might even be something to consider pursuing, is just change that block to a gang box. And then there's only
Well, and
one
the-
spot you
The
have to
problem
clear.
there, I've dealt with this extensively, is that the cost of that box goes to the property owners, unless the city wants to buy a mailbox for those people to use. And then you have issues of keys and who's responsible for rekeying the things when keys get lost. And so really it has to be put in by the developer and then passed off to a homeowners association.
Yeah.
Or the post office has to agree to do it, but they won't generally pay for a gang mailbox structure.
Hmm.
So I dealt with that a lot in Eatonville because they were a rural district and the carrier refused to get out of the car, even though she was serving a greater area as well as this little town. And so everybody wanted a mailbox out on their sidewalk, but then their mailbox was in the sidewalk blocking pedestrians and ADA accessibility. It was a nightmare.
So let me ask a silly question. If this is a federal law, block mailboxes, why are we getting involved in it?
So the federal police don't spend much time here.
But it's a federal law in the books already, why do we need to have another overlay on top of it?
Right, why isn't the post office contacting the right people, which is nuts, because we don't,
I
they
don't
know it's a federal law.
Right
They-
now, parking on the city streets is legal, right? And there's a law from the feds that says you can't block a mailbox.
Does-
So why do we need, I'm playing devil's advocate.
I'm
It's
guessing-
as good a question as any.
I'm not an attorney, but I'm guessing the answer to that is that federal laws are probably prosecuted in federal court.
Okay.
But I don't know for sure.
We could, you know.
I think for local police to enforce something, it's gotta be a local or state law, because I don't know that they're able to enforce a federal law. Or at least to write a ticket for it.
Right.
Well, the most recent information we have is the email from Officer Lynch, about a month ago. So, and he's requesting the city ordinance that will allow them to ticket, I guess. So,
I think that, you know, I'll go back and talk to them, because it seems to me like the post office should be able to ticket them,
well, they,
per the federal law.
yeah,
And
they may not
which-
have the.
Which mailboxes are they blocking?
Yeah, which
Well, and
locations
this
has he
is-
heard from too, would be interesting.
This, I just put this in here, this is from our old packet a year and a half ago, so this is not a current issue, but I only attached it because the federal code was attached to that
Right.
Okay.
item.
And this is the one I was telling you about, that we lost a lot of parking places when this one was being discussed.
500 division?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it is forever now. Is it 4 hours?
Mark said, I wish he was here today, but he said something like, I don't remember, but it was quite a few, 10 or 12 parking places would be
Oh, it's
affected.
probably where these X's are. Now that I see the X's.
There was quite a few
It's the same color as the
affected.
trees.
Oh, yeah.
And I do remember this now, sitting in the public properties when this was discussed before. Well, another potential solution, and I don't know if it's a good one, but another potential solution, if the postal service had a consistent time that they were on this street, you could just post it, no parking between
Certain hours.
noon and 2.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
But then again, if they change things, then you have to go change your signs and change your your parking rules have to be adopted by ordinance, and so if you're gonna have a specific restriction, it's gotta be in your code, and then.
I'm looking at this map, obviously I don't know when a picture was taken, but there's only one car in one of these 5 spots.
I know,
It's probably not a weekday, I'm guessing, because it sounds like there's a lot of people parking out there during the day.
Yeah, this is right up by the courthouse.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that when the courthouse is busy, that's.
You know what we need, Mr. Mayor? We need a massive parking garage at the courthouse.
You know, we need to start with, just a teeny bit of help, is figure out why we can't access that gravel lot that we're gonna end up with off of Bay Street. That seems ridiculous
That's an
to
easy
me.
ordinance, I mean, you
Well,
just
I
have to
know,
amend the
but I
code.
mean, we need to change that ordinance and then use that as an overflow lot or a lot for festival park or whatever we wanna do. But I mean, at least temporarily, we can park 20 cars in there, or 30. Yeah, I am so aware that we do need every single parking place we can find and get people used to walking. Because even when we use every parking place, they still have to walk 4 or 5 blocks to get where they want to go. But yeah, I just hate to lose more spaces. Force
Well,
more
it would
people
be,
to walk
it would be
farther.
helpful if we knew what locations he'd heard from, Officer Legend had heard from. And
All right, I'll try to.
it may not be, you know.
I'll talk to Mark too, and I'll find out about this, you know, you're right, I don't know why I didn't even think about the federal angle. But maybe we can go at that, attack it at that angle and fix the problem without having to go through the code.
Yeah, one of the issues I see is what's been brought up here, and is each neighborhood's a little different. And when we make an ordinance, we're making it for the entire city. And it's going to be different in Jeff's neighborhood as to my neighborhood, as to the mayor's or yours.
Well, and my neighborhood's already signed, no parking on this side of the street, no parking on either side of the street during snow, and no parking in front of the gang mailbox. I mean, there's 2 mailboxes in the whole neighborhood,
Yeah.
that's it.
So I wonder what the problem areas are.
Yeah, I'll talk to Mark and I'll talk to the officer, because Mark is totally dedicated to complaint-driven
Correct,
solutions.
right.
And sometimes, and I'll explain, I wish he was here because he could hear your comments too. Sometimes we don't want a solution that covers the whole city for a complaint that just covers one place. So let me talk.
So my report will be nothing to move forward at this
So
time.
just bring this back next meeting?
More information.
Yeah,
more
I'll get
discussion.
more information from Mark.
Yeah, and that's 2 weeks, so.
Yeah.
it's-
Okay.
no, we can-
Park rules.
I'm gonna take one and pass it. So I was gonna read on the park rules. I sent this to the police department, and I guess the feedback that I got, they reviewed this for what it is, not for its substance. And basically, they said, and I got this on Sunday, is we've reviewed the parks rules and we believe the entire chapter is well written and articulates the rules so they would be enforceable. I have no suggestions for any change. So I know that this is the same version that was discussed at council where there was a lot of pushback on these issues. I haven't had time to make any changes, but I wanted to bring it forward for discussion to see, you know, what sorts of things this committee feels need to be included and what sorts of things need to be maybe taken out of this so that it would be more palatable, or perhaps a suggestion that we just don't move forward with this and that we don't adopt park rules.
I'm trying to remember some of the issues that were brought up at council.
Well, and,
at the work study.
yeah, I know that a couple of council members thought this was draconian. I think if I recall the correct word being used. I personally had an issue with some of the games and sports. I mean, the purpose of the park, like baseball, I don't understand why we would limit a friendly, pickup game of some over the line, 4, 5, 6 teenage kids out there playing over the line. And I have to apologize. I had a note to myself to go through every single word on this, and I thought I would wait to see what the police department input was first before I did that, and I have not, because I know under games and sports, my first sports love, baseball, I'm going to say remove.
Well, I
But that's
think,
just my own personal preference. And did you get any feedback from the other council members on
I
that?
have not gotten any feedback from anyone, and I had to ask the chief again, last week, and I finally got the response from him this weekend. But my concern with the baseball issue is that baseball in designated areas is good, but you have a liability issue that the city is taking on if you're, you know, if people are playing baseball and somebody gets hit in the head when they're out walking on a trail, you know, that's a hard object. And I think all the items that are in there are hard objects as opposed to saying, it's not that we don't want people to play sports, it's that we don't want hard objects flying through the air that in areas where other people are maybe not paying attention. But,
You know, that's what we have parks for, is to play games with.
well, and some parks are
objects.
better for that than others.
Yeah, but then you put yourself in a position of picking and choosing and having a different park rule for every park in the system.
Let's go for example, let's say we develop Paul Powers and we got Grassfield up there and some neighborhood kids off of Flower Street wanna go over there and practice some over the line game, you know, 3-on-3, right? I'm not gonna have a rule that says they can't do, I would never support a rule that says they can't do.
No, I wouldn't either. This is the whole idea behind parks,
You
is to
know.
have them using it,
Yeah,
playing
you
their
know,
game.
now archery, yeah, I'm gonna have a
Yeah.
problem with somebody shooting some arrows, you know, I get that, so.
Well, and probably golf too.
Yeah, golf, well, you know.
Depends on the golfer, I guess.
I've seen a lot of, I used to drive on Molinex a lot, and that's a great little lower level field for people to chip, you know, whip out their 9
Wiffle, you
iron.
use wiffle balls and practice golf.
Yeah.
I don't know,
So,
I just think people have enough common sense. We don't have to cover every conceivable.
I think that was the general feeling of council, was that how much of this was necessary. I think the intent behind games and sports might be okay, but the way it's written, it is a little daunting. For example, I would change the lessons to other missile except at designated places, and then delete the set apart for purposes, because I think we're trying to tell people that there's a specific place for these types of things. And there might be a better way to phrase it, like only in designated places are you able to play the following. Because otherwise it looks like we're saying you can't play this anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open. I think this was borrowed from another city, and I think the reason that they probably did this was they just said hard objects flying through the sky.
yeah. And I understand enough rules need to be in place to give the police the authority to move along those that are causing a disturbance or doing something in an unsafe manner. But some of this stuff's gonna infringe on, I think, what the actual park was built to do.
Well, maybe if we're gonna have a meeting in 2 weeks, maybe, now that you have a fresh copy of this, you wanna go through it
I
and
do.
come back with suggestions at the next meeting we can
And
discuss?
maybe shoot another email out to the other council members saying, look, we're gonna, we really want your input on this, good, bad, or indifferent. So we have, you know, I'm not getting a sense that this is anything that's urgent, but I do wanna,
No.
you know, try to get one more look at this once and for all, get everybody's input, and then make a more informed decision. Do we wanna edit what we have? Do we wanna drop what we have? You know, and kind of maybe ask for that consensus too. You know, edit the heck out of this is fine, I don't have a problem with that. You know, drop it all together is kind of what I'm hearing. There's our 2 options.
I think that, just my own personal feeling is, particularly with the, McCollum Woods Park, you know, it's different than, I'm gonna call it Central Park, and that's the wrong name, I realize, but it's different in Central Park or the Active Club Park. And I believe that our law enforcement needs the ability to, do their job out there. And so if we need a park, you know, rules for that, then that's what we have to do.
Maybe a disclaimer of other unsafe acts or something. I don't know, you know,
Well,
something
and-
that gives the officer an option to say, hey, this is
Yeah,
unsafe.
and that's kind of what I was thinking, unsafe acts that pose a danger to yourself or the, you know.
Additional public.
And that's open for definition, but isn't that every time the cop makes a citation, and goes to court, it's all open for the court's interpretation? The other thing, Nick, that I thought maybe we could add on here that I just see right now is something that allows us to do a park by park rules.
And I don't think this precludes this. This is meant as a starting point, and then if you
Right.
want to have specific rules in specific parks, you would have to address those and
Well-
say, you know, 1224, 160
Well, it
McCormick
kinda
Park.
does in some, like Watercraft, it does where it says proposed by the city and so designated by signs. Cause when I first read it, I'm going, wait a minute, we have a, you know, DeKalb Street
Mhm.
here is a park, and we're gonna launch boats from it, and it says you can't launch the same at any point upon the shore, but then it says, except at a place set apart for such purposes by city and so designated by signs. Boy, it's cumbersome, but that means we'd have to post a sign that says you can launch a boat here or from here.
I was just gonna suggest that we just say other rules, and the city may pass additional or modify rules per each specific park or something, just have language in there that lets us do that.
Well, you can do that anyway, because that's gonna have to be by ordinance. I mean, anything that you want to enforce has to be in your code,
Okay.
or it has to be in state law, so one of those two things.
I can sort of see where people would think that if somebody saw the rules, it would give people ideas. Like, you know, we're thinking, well, people should know they can't drink in a park, but the moment you tell them that they can't, they're gonna want to sort of tweak a rule that they see in front of them. So I think that's part of the concern of some of the councils, that we want to give law enforcement the tools they need, but somehow a list of things that may incite people to want to break them.
And to me, I mean, there's some really basic things like camping and fires that could potentially be an issue if somebody decides they, you know, want to set up a homeless camp or something in one of the parks. That right now we don't have the ability to evict them. And then, you know, other things like if somebody decides they want to go off-roading in our park and tear up the lawn, you know, that's something that we don't have any. I mean, I guess you can get them on reckless driving, but.
Okay, I said we take
So
another
yeah,
stab at
I'll
it.
send it to the whole council so that I can solicit feedback and we'll bring it back next meeting.
Do we have anything here about no glass bottles regardless of content?
No, I don't.
I grew up in areas where that whole thing about alcohol in the parks. Yeah, here, no there, yes on the beach, no on the beach, but everywhere was no glass. So, because, you know, Newport would have their set, Huntington would have their set. So city beaches were no, state beaches were yes, but no glass, and it was just, okay. Is that everything on our agenda? We wanted to do budget, right?
That budget.
So Nick had called me and then we had a discussion on, he shared that he talked to you about economic development. And I want to add an agenda item about those items that were slated for budget purposes to be supported by this committee. And I have to tell you, Nick, I was telling them back before the meeting, and I know that Alan told us how to read this. I had great difficulty going through this budget and trying to figure out those issues specific to public property that,
My thought was mostly the supplemental requests, more so than what's
Yes.
actually in the text.
and do we have an outline of that, or can you direct me where they are? 'Cause I
They're
spent an
gray
hour-
sheets in your budget book,
Yeah,
so
they're the great ones.
in every chapter there's gray sheets, and I think,
Okay,
so if you start in finance and the clerk, I think,
Yeah, I went back, if you go to, go back to 123, 124 in there.
okay.
I mean, this is the,
This is what I was actually looking for, and I never got there. I spent all the time up here going through this section, and
this is public works.
yeah, I think if you look at Public Works, for instance, there's a supplemental project concerning City Hall and sealing it, weatherproofing it.
Are you talking about page 127 or what's it called now?
I'm gonna share yours, I left
Yeah.
it downstairs.
60,000 for the clock tower.
Yeah, so there's the clock, there's the building, and, you know, those are obviously things that relate to public properties, and so if this committee wants to have input on those,
Yikes, supplemental
you know,
number
you're free to
4.
make recommendations.
$60,000.
And this is something, again, that we're gonna have another meeting before budget discussions take place, so, you know, this is really just a time to bring it to the attention of the committee of what's involved and what's related to.
But when we look at this, there were a couple, one was the City Hall, exterior paint and seal, and then there was the clock tower.
Yeah, I think those are the two big ones.
The two big ones, but there isn't anything else in here for parks, so I was trying to remember what we had put in here.
These technically aren't parks.
No, but they're public properties.
And and as far as I can remember, there isn't I don't think there's anything supplemental in parks, right? Mayor, do you remember? Are there any gray sheets at the end of that?
No, those are the gray sheets at the end of that. I was just
Oh, okay.
looking for,
So
because some things are kind of hidden in here. I don't wanna say hidden, but you find them, like the wayfinding is in Public Works.
Yeah, it's under streets, yeah.
Yeah, so,
So anyway, I mean, I guess this is an opportunity, one, for this committee to say, you know, say, these are the things I care about, is this in there, and have a discussion about it. And then number two, it's a time for you to discuss items that are in the supplemental budget and talk about the merits of those and whether this committee is, you know, feel strongly in one way or another about them.
Well, other than the problem I had was trying to find that 95, 95, whatever it was, the carryover for what we did. And I couldn't even find a line item for Paul Powers anywhere in here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of my, and this is not my background. Budgeting is not something that comes easily for me, is to read all these spreadsheets. I can get there eventually if somebody can show it to me. Oh yeah, okay. And then I can see the carryover from year to year and all of that.
Yeah. Well, so at the end of the year, Paul Powers, the money that was budgeted in 2014, if it's not spent, it goes into beginning balance.
Okay.
And then you read the parks budget and you see what's being spent and what the ending balance is. And I think that you'll find that the ending balance is sizable because we haven't budgeted.
We haven't spent what was budgeted.
We haven't spent what was budgeted, and we're not allocating that for the same purpose in 2015, unless, you know, the council decides to put something in the budget, which nothing is proposed at this time.
I think there should be 60 grand in for Paul Powers.
Yeah, that's just-
That takes care of the 10 for the assumed, the design work and the 50 for the work, which was what we had said, and I thought we had support to carry over enough money to do that work in 15.
Well, and it's possible that if council authorizes the design, it can be done before the end of the year in this year's budget, and then it would just be putting money in there to actually execute that, whatever gets designed before the end of the year.
Design, what do you,
I'm talking about what we talked about earlier, which was the bare minimum for the upper area grading, erosion control, and reseeding and the fence.
I think some of that's already,
Okay, yeah,
part of it was the survey, and the survey's already been done.
right, but that, yeah,
Oh, you're right, the survey's been paid for, we still need the design work though to do.
Well, yeah,
The
we
survey for
were
the
gonna,
plans.
yeah, I guess so, but to me, we were gonna, you know, we weren't gonna have a full-blown design of filling up the holes, cleaning the brush and putting down the, you know, fill, and then replanting, because, Mark could do that, you know.
well, Mark was gonna stamp it, but he needed somebody to draft it for him, so that he could hand a contractor something to get a price
Okay.
that had quantities and you know, was
Yeah,
biddable.
cubic yards and stuff like that, yeah. But that shouldn't be an awful big, huge amount of money.
No, and we're gonna get that and bring it back to the next meeting here,
Yeah,
isn't it?
bring
right, and the unfortunate part is just the communication and presentation of that.
Do you want Jeff to just have a quick conversation about the exterior repairs on the clock tower rehab?
Yeah.
Do we want to weigh in and what do we think?
Yeah. Let me go back to that page. That
Yeah, and I wish Mark was here to answer questions about the clock.
What's on
but-
121 is the exterior and the clock is on 27. And the clock is just the clock, it's not even the chimes, right? The chimes is completely separate from the clock.
Yeah, there's a computerized system which apparently is running on like 1998 software, and so there's
For the
an
chimes?
upgrade needed. Well, not the
Of the clock.
not the audio portion of it, but the actual computer portion of it that that keeps time. And so I think it's replace the face, which is cracked. It's new motor mechanism for moving the clock, and then the computer system that actually keeps time. And that's my understanding of it. But I
See. Yeah, I'm not inclined to support the current system because it's a proprietary format. For example, we couldn't have citizens writing a song that we could play on our system. It's not like a standard MP3 file format, it's whatever this vendor's format is. And one thing that does worry me about the chimes is that I think the music only goes up to the 70s. So we have a huge generational gap here. There's not a single 80s song we've heard. Now maybe they
This is
are.
interesting, I know nothing about this.
Oh, well, okay, I hear it because I'm in.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, see, I hear that,
You hear it too.
yeah.
A lot of times I call it stripper music because it reminds me of, old musical type of songs. 3/4 time, and I think, oh, there's another stripper song or something. I think it's gone as late as the 70s. I'm thinking Seals and Crofts, Diamond Girl is probably the latest song. So it would be nice if we could maybe update it.
So you said it's proprietary, we don't have the authority to do whatever we want with our own clock tower?
Right, we have to buy
We're talking-
chips that
we're
have
talking-
their
With the clock tower, but not with the clocks.
yeah, and I don't know that the proposal is changing the music. I think it's
Yeah, it's just, I read it, that it was just the clock, that it had nothing to do with
The music.
the audio piece of it.
yeah.
Well, it does say operating systems for music and chimes.
Oh, okay.
Which, if it was only the physical clock, I could see that one thing, but if it's also the musical system, I'm hesitant to recommend renewing with the company we got.
And I'm not sure how integrated the system is.
Yeah, we need Mark here. We talked about a set of things. I don't think he's dialed in the money it's gonna cost to caulk and repair around the clock once we, I wish he was here. Like I said, we could ask him, once we remove those faces, have you considered that, we're gonna have to do some repair? I mean, we will have to do some repair work, I just don't know how much. Apparently, he's got the 60,000 in there. I hope he budgeted enough above the cost of the equipment or the material.
And it's suggested to come from REIT.
Well, what we do not want is a clock that doesn't work up there.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but when we do this, it's very expensive to buy the equipment to get up there.
And do it, so you do it once.
Yeah.
We don't want to do it once. And
So I think what's in there is the minimum to get the thing fixed and working again. And
Well, Fred's right, it does say dials, clock face, and operating systems for music and chimes is in dire need of upgrade.
it's my understanding, it's the mechanism, the clock faces too, because the clock faces are plexiglass, and especially on the weather side, they're cracking, it's splitting. And there's been a couple of repairs.
And the dials, the physical dials, apparently
They keep sharing off pins, we have them or something. I think it might
It's
just
physically-
be bad design,
It might be better if we had a digital one that looks like a real clock. It projects and it looks like the old-fashioned clock with the hands and something.
I think they make such things, but they're really pricey.
I would almost prefer, what if we thought about just taking out the clock and putting in windows and having it be an observation tower and charging people to go up and look at it? $5.
no, if it's tall enough to charge.
Actually, do you want to see, I'll show you.
The access
Is
to
there-
it,
There
Fred,
Is there
access to it's too steep.
Oh, access is actually challenging because it's the oddest. I can show you.
Then why would we make that available to the public if it were inconvenient?
We should, because of the way the ladder works. Yeah, it's a goofy ladder too, it's something.
And it's probably too expensive to put an elevator up there.
Yeah, there's ADA requirements for something that's this new, and if you make it available to the public, what I've heard that you can do is you can put a screen that shows everything that you can see at the top, at the bottom, so that it meets ADA requirements.
With screen?
Yeah, digital
Oh,
screen.
digital.
And they can move the camera and look out just like everybody else.
I would like a camera up there too.
So in general, my overall thought on spending money on facilities is we need to keep them up to date, or it's gonna cost twice as much
I
down
am
the
so
road.
glad to hear you say that.
So I don't have a problem spending or recommending spending the money if this is what it takes to keep things from getting worse.
We have a caulking.
Yeah, I think the ceiling on the building is really the critical
The
one.
ceiling, yeah, because we're getting water in this building every
Yeah.
year, more every year.
And is it possible that we could do part of it every year, so we don't have to do it all at once, like if we
Well, so
did
we've
one
tried to
side
do
every
that.
year?
We've tried to do that. We've put it in the budget every year I've been mayor, and
And
every year
people
it's been
said
used
no.
somewhere else
Yeah.
because, you know,
Well, and a fallback.
it's not a glaring need.
And that's part of this, spending the money to keep it up, so you don't have to spend $100,000 in one whack.
And a secondary thing is if they don't wanna spend paving all accounts of the 100,000, maybe a portion of it for the worst side, like the south side, or the west side, whatever is the most.
See, in supplemental two, we have 100,000 in for exterior caulking, brick ceiling, and painting. And that's not enough to do all the building, but it's enough to do two
I was
sides,
just seeing if there's
two
anything else.
weather sides. And the two most weathers.
Is it labor? What is the labor? Okay.
I don't know, I personally, from the public properties perspective, I would like to see money allocated in the budget. You know, up to, you said 60,000 for Paul Powers. I would like to get that piece done. And if we can get it done this year out of the allocation that we had last year, then I would be supportive of that.
And I know we had asked for that during the budget meeting on the work study, and I didn't see great opposition, but then again, everybody knew we were gonna come through the budget, so why would,
Right.
let's throw it up on the board and see where we go from there, so. Outside of that, in the money on maintenance and operations, I'm okay with the way that's being asked for at this point.
Yeah, I have.
So my suggestion would be, just if the Public Properties Committee wants to have a recommendation as a committee concerning the budget, it sounds like you've got three things that you support so far, and that's Paul Powers, the clock repair, and the building sealing up everything for weather. If there's anything else in the budget or that's not in the budget that you have an opinion on, at the next meeting, you guys can make a formal recommendation, and you can, either announce your recommendation, or just write something and have the chair sign it and give it to the finance committee and say, this is our recommendation for improvements.
And so we have our next meeting to do that.
Yeah, that's the day before Veterans Day. I think, is that the?
It's like the 10th or something.
Yeah, I think it's the 10th.
You know, that supplemental is like a parks plan. You don't really get it done. Some of the things have been in supplemental since I've gotten here, since before I've gotten here.
Yeah,
We
Monday
never
the
have
10th.
money. It's just a wish list in case I don't know what it is. What is it in case we get a
Well, it's-
windfall some way or another, or?
Well, but at the same time, up to this point, it's been the council's policy that I think they're saving REAP money for transportation improvements. But REAP money is able to be spent on things like building repairs, and so
Right.
it's a decision that you're making to save that money for something else rather than
We can
spending it on the building.
reappropriate it.
Yeah,
And
Have
get
they
it
ever
done.
talked about a cheap transportation benefit district?
yeah, that's in the transportation
Okay.
plan that was approved in 2012.
And vehicle license fees?
Yeah, it's just never been brought forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've never heard of it.
Anything else? Then I will close this meeting. We want to take a quick break for the next one?
Yeah, let's take a quick. Do you want to see when some stuff in your brand to come up?
Yeah. Call her. Hey Brandy, do you want to come up now or towards the end of the meeting? Okay, we're just taking a 5-minute break, so we'll start in a few minutes. Thanks.